I know.
Hey everyone, I am Violette de Ayala. I'm the founder of FemCity, and you are joining me today for Business for Your Soul. I really love interviewing amazing women that I feel have inspiring stories. And today I am really excited to introduce to you our guest, Mindy Barnett. She is a 10-year news reporter, anchor in Philadelphia and in New York. She's also a former publicist, landing clients on Oprah. Oh my gosh. Today, Good Morning America, Live with Kelly. She's a mom of two, author and motivational speaker and host. I love adding the mom of two because that also rounds up like all the balance that it takes to put it all together.
Yeah.
I am so excited you're joining us.
Working at the same time. That's so much fun, isn't it, Violet?
It's so much fun. Anyway, I love it. I'm so excited you're here. I think you have such a great story. You have so many fans already in FemCity, Philadelphia. You can see Bridget already commented how fabulous you are. So I'm super excited that you're here joining us. And anything you want to add before we get started?
Well, I'm just the girl next door. I'm all about girl power. I love motivating people. That's why I wrote the book that we can talk about a little bit. And I actually just decided in this shutdown that we were all in, even though I was working remote and all of that I was going to go back to school. So I applied to University of Pennsylvania to go part-time and get my master's in positive psychology so I can even empower women that much more and use it a little bit in terms of the psyche with my public relations tactics and stuff like that. And I launched a virtual meetup group. It's called V50 Virtual 5 O'Clock. I launched it with 3 other men who are amazing from the New York metropolitan area. And what else am I doing in my spare time? And then I also not spare time. I'm working on a TED Talk. So yeah, so that just would add that color to.
Oh yeah, you have like so much time on your hands. So much time on your hands. So. So the positive psychology program at University of Pennsylvania, I have 2 friends that graduated from that program. Sean Doyle and Lisa Stansom, who is one of our FemCity leaders and also global member. Yeah, I am obsessed with that program.
That's from positive psychology, the MA.
Yes.
Oh, that's so great. Oh, good.
Obsessed. Yeah. That is so wonderful. And shout out to Allison, who's another FemCity Philadelphia member who's on the board for University of Pennsylvania. I think she helps with her fundraising. So if she's watching this, shout out to her. She is she graduated from UPenn and also does a lot of work with the school currently as well. So I took one class during COVID at University of Pennsylvania through their online courses. It was about marketing. Yeah. I mean, it's not a master's. No, I would love to do that. That's so cool.
I think it's great. I mean, I've not done online classes, but I'm always reading leadership books and things like that because we can always grow and learn.
Yes.
Anything you can soak up makes you just more well-rounded and better for others. Yeah, that's awesome. Good for you.
Yeah, no, you've inspired me. I love that you're doing that. I had so many friends that went back. Sean was a running attorney and went back and got that. I love hearing those stories of people who are just going back and learning, and that's a lot you have going on. A lot.
Yeah, I know. Well, we all have to be sort of like ready to kind of make pivots and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
Move with the ebbs and flows of the world right now. I mean, it's like that all the time in business, when you're on.
Yeah.
But I think this situation's really opened our eyes, like collectively, to really embrace that notion more so than ever. So
absolutely. So I wanted to share a little bit today. I wanted to ask you some questions about, just to kind of get things started, is that I love hearing the founding stories. And I love, by the way, that you've pivoted and shifted from really 3 careers in a sense. You've got your news reporter, anchor in Philly and New York. Then you got the former publicist, which makes sense. I have a lot of friends that did the same kind of shift. They were in the journalistic world and then they jumped over to the publicity world. And then you then shifted over into being author, motivational speaker, and host. It all makes sense. It's all connected. But I love that you pivoted so gracefully in the passions that you have. What is your founding story like when you think about your current right now, what you're doing? You've got your book. I know you're on a tour in a sense of like sharing your book and doing a lot, speaking about that. What was it that got you started in this path? And maybe even touch upon like what made you change through all those 3 different, because I think a lot of femmes are probably listening or watching and sometimes we feel like there's something wrong with us when we go from one to the other to the other. I think it's normal. I did the same thing. I was a Pilates teacher, owned my own Pilates studio, did PR for environmental initiatives in the city of Miami, and then now I started FemCity. So I love that about you. Can you share about how that journey happened and like how you got to today? Yeah.
So to back up with the first notion that you say you kind of stay in one career and just kind of stay there, that's what I was brought up to. So my mom, well, she went back to school a little later in life, but she stayed in the education path. She was a teacher and she got a master's and a variety of masters. And my father he was a principal of a high school, and he literally worked at the same school for 40 years. He started at that school, right out of school, went and got his master's, became a principal, same school district, same school, and retired there. So for me, I was like, I'm like the black sheep of the family, because I'm like jumping around, but it all sort of kind of ebbs together, or webs together, I should say, in regards to the fields that I'm in. So I want to just say the PR piece is very much still my main bread and butter. That's my heart and soul. And then the author and the speaking is an extension of the PR. But when I went to school, and really since I probably would say probably about 8th grade, I always wanted to be a news reporter anchor. I love the news. I love to write. I love to perform. And I just kind of married all of those different interests together and picked that profession. So I was very lucky. I literally applied to colleges solely for that purpose. I only applied to schools that had very strong communication departments. And I was lucky enough to be able to enter that industry because that's a very competitive field, as I'm sure you can imagine.
I've heard.
The Philly market. I worked in the New York City vicinity as well. And I also lived in other parts of the country, as is very common in television news. I lived in Illinois for a while. I lived in the South. I lived in Monroe, Louisiana earlier in my career, and sort of earned a lot of on-air stripes in these different media markets. And I guess I'd say at about age 30, I was getting to be about 30 years old at the time. And I was a morning anchor for the majority of my career, getting up in the middle of the night, loving what I did, but literally it was started becoming all I really had was me and my puppy. I just going against the grain of the rest of the world. It was hard to date. I had friends back home were getting married, having kids. I didn't see anything like that in my near future, just because my schedule just didn't really allow for much other than work. So I decided I wanted to kind of parlay that experience into something else, but I plan to have more of a quote 9-to-5 life. I was trying to kind of use my news experience and use it in I guess a more traditional day-to-day job, right? So I entered public relations, and I didn't really start out, in all honesty, Violet, to be an entrepreneur and own my own company. I worked for another woman, who will remain unnamed for the sake of this podcast, but I learned a ton from her. It was definitely meant to be that I worked there, but it was an unpleasant experience. It taught me a lot, but it wasn't something that I could do for the long haul. So I left, and because of the time I had been there, and I realized how much I was able to do on her behalf for her clients because of my news experience and my news knowledge and connections and so forth, I just took a leap of faith and started my own company. And I'm skipping over a lot of details, but that's sort of how it kind of all came to be. I gave it a shot. I didn't even really put a business plan together. I didn't have an LLC set up. I didn't have anything really together. I just wanted to see how it would go. And I started with one client, basically was consulting as for this business. I agreed to a very short term because I didn't know how successful I was going to be. And I was very, very lucky, a lot of hard work. And, she happened to have a lot of influential people who were clients of hers who saw all of the great exposure I was securing for her in the news. And she was putting me in touch with different people. And before I knew it, I had 5 really good clients in less than say 4 months. It just sort of organically blossomed. And that's sort of how my business came out. I was working from home. It was just me. And then I'd say a year in, I hired, I don't want to call her an assistant, but someone to help me because I couldn't physically be in 2 places at the same time if there was multiple shoots going on. I met my, now divorced, but I met my husband through a client, and we got married, and I started having a family with him, and my business took off even more so. And I'm just a hustler like you are. You have to have that mindset. But I just always, and I guess because you just never know what tomorrow is going to bring. And obviously the climate we're in today sort of reminds us of that. I always work that much harder because I just don't know what tomorrow is going to look like. So I always want to save for that rainy day, have something in the can for the rainy day. I'm always worried the rainy day is going to come and monsoon on me tomorrow. So I think that's just the natural fear most entrepreneurs face. And if you don't have some fear, someone recently told me this and it made me feel better. If you don't have that fear in you, then you might as well just call it quits, because it's that fear that, not saying you succumb to the fear, but it's that fear that keeps you moving and keeps you like running towards the finish line that never really seems to be reached, but it's there in existence on the horizon and you're aiming for it. So that's sort of how the PR firm came about. When I was in news, back up for a moment, spent a lot of time as a medical reporter and when I anchored. So I always had some interest in that medical industry, wellness, et cetera. And while we represent a variety of industries that range from finance to hospitality to legal, experts, I do have a nice chunk of clientele in the medical space, and really kind of made that sort of a niche, if I have to pick a niche, for my firm and for myself. I have a very talented team of now a boutique 5, but nevertheless extremely helpful, certainly enabling me to do the book Intermission that I was very passionate about, which is a women empowerment predominantly book geared towards women, obviously, and the memoir. I speak a lot about the stuff I was just talking to you about, a lot about my career, a lot about my upbringing that led me down the path and taught me those goals to help other people out there kind of achieve similar kind of conquests, if you will. And I also talk about my trials and some of my defeats and what I've learned from those defeats. And I talk a lot about my marriage that lasted 10 years, but then eventually, unfortunately, failed. And some of the inner struggles I went through kind of making that decision to end that marriage because of my 2 kids that you mentioned. And also because, we didn't really fight a lot. We just kind of grew apart and I felt like I was being unfulfilled, and we had different mindsets in terms of I think the day-to-day work ethic. Not to say he's not a hard worker. You have to have a match, I think, with somebody, to get along well in that way. And then also, sharing my story of, openly and things like that, having the strength to do that to help other women, and then using some of that material and content and advancing and taking it a step further in my keynoting that I'm starting to do, predominantly in the corporate space, but also at summits and things of that nature for women predominantly, and started a podcast. I did that. I launched in February. It's called The Race for the Ring. It's just a fun podcast, talk a lot about dating and second time around predominantly, and the trials and triumphs that go with that, and just really good advice and fun. It's just a fun release for me, but it's a good extension of the book because I touch on some of that in the book too. And I mentioned going back to school now, to kind of marry back to the keynoting, so that I'm actually able to offer some really sound advice to women to be positive and to take a leap of faith and believe in themselves. And we're all leaders. That's sort of my message. It doesn't matter if you're an entrepreneur, you're a CEO, you're an employee, you're a stay-at-home mom. It doesn't really matter. We're all leaders in our own way. And, we have to believe in ourselves and see ourselves in that way when we look in the mirror.
Absolutely. And I was thinking when I was reading your bio, I didn't understand that you were still a publicist. I was thinking it was a former, so I'm so sorry that you are still a publicist.
Yeah, it's okay. It's fine.
Okay. There's so many roles. So I'm so excited. And I love that you shared also, I'm taking notes, that you kind of stumbled into being an entrepreneur, that your 2 parents, you did not come from an upbringing of watching other parents launching a business, starting a business. And I think that's a really great point to make, because there's so many women in our community that stumbled upon being a small business owner, stumbled upon being an entrepreneur. They didn't go to school for it. They didn't study business. It kind of just worked out that way. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's a really important kind of little highlight, just kind of grabbing it out of there, so that if you're watching and you're listening, this is really great. I'm going to ask, obviously, Mindy more questions, but keep that also in the back of your mind, that she is someone who is like me and like you, didn't go to, Wharton Business School, maybe you will now, but you didn't go to Wharton Business School and you didn't work at Goldman Sachs. So a lot of us are in that same place where we just stumbled upon it, figured it out on our own, had mentors, some good, some not so good. And you kind of just found your place here. So I love that you shared that. And I also wanted to put a little highlight on, you talked about fear. And that's really the place where I always say that's where the golden nuggets of life exist. Like anytime you walk into that space of fear, it's uncomfortable, it's scary, you get anxiety, you might feel like throwing up, whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's where the place of real growth happens. And I see so many times women in our communities, they're watching on the sideline. Like they don't want to really push it. They don't want to get in, you know what I mean? Like it's really scary out there. So I love that you mentioned that. I was going to ask you, and I think I know what you're going to say, your response, but I wanted to ask you, my intention in asking this is that sometimes we start a business and we don't see it evolving. We don't see where it's going to go. When you started your PR firm and when you even actually launched your book, did you ever think that you would be where you are today? I mean, like even the placements that you've done in Oprah and Live with Kelly, like these really big placements, did you know that it was going to be as big as it is when you first started?
No, honestly, I was doing it to pay my car bill. To pay a car note. I like left TV, like I said, to go work for this person who was less than kind, let's say, and left with nothing. And he was like, I could try to do it on my own. And I had a lot of naysayers that were like, you're crazy. You have to get the clients. Like, you know the news, but you don't know the clients. And I'm like, I'm going to try. And I just very like right place, right time to land that first one. And it just takes one. You just worked really hard. And I think that you don't always have to have that plan. And I sometimes think that life kind of opens itself up even more beautifully than you could ever imagine if you don't stay stuck on that one road and are open to taking another path. I mean, I really wanted to stay in news. Like I left news because I wanted to. I didn't lose my job. Like I resigned and that was a whole other thing, but I write about my book because that was a very hard decision for me to make because I identified myself as a reporter and like wanted to be one for so long. So I left. I went to go work for this person. I was very unhappy working for this person and then left. And then I was like, I'm going back to news because if that's PR, I want absolutely nothing to do with it. And then I just did this sort of like, for 6 months, I was sort of like, didn't even have, like I said, like a formal company set up. People were writing me checks. And then at the time I was dating my then husband, to be, I guess. And I had gotten this job offer in another market and because I had still sent tapes out and things like that. And then he's like, how are you just going to abandon your business? And that's sort of when the light went on that I actually had a business, to be honest with you. I did. I mean, I had clients at that point, but I didn't really see myself that way. And even now, I'm like, I'm a really good publicist. And I think I'm really good mentors. I know like my team really looks to me and I really enjoy mentoring them. And I think that's how I sort of got into like the author lane and like the speaker lane, because I felt like if I could have an impact on them and some of my, community friends and things like that, then I would like to have a bigger impact on more people. But the business part is, I just sort of go with the flow, Violet. Like I'm not good at like doing a forecast and looking at the finances and seeing where I can grow. And I mean, I've had coaches come in and help me with some of that. I look to other experts because I am lacking in that area. And I think that if we can learn from other people, just like they may not be able to do PR the way I do because of my knowledge, then obviously that's fantastic, right? But yeah, no, I am definitely not like that cookie cutter business person at all. I'm just a really, really good publicist. Right.
No, but I love that
on stage and speak. And that's sort of how this all sort of came about. Yeah.
I love that you were already in the role. You were already a successful publicist. Thanks. And you yourself didn't see it. It took somebody else to be like, calling it that, titling it that, and you were like, wait, what? Like, I love that.
Thanks. Even my company name, I literally did, I was like, I'll just call it MD and Associates. Like, I didn't even, public relations, I didn't even like give it a lot of thought because I didn't think it was going to be like this long thing. I would definitely come up with like an actual name. I don't want to use my initials like that way because now everybody just thinks of me only, you know, which is nice. But like I have a great team too, you know, and my domain is so long. And when I give out my email address, everyone's like, and I'm like, I know. I'm like, I know. It's, well, to be honest, like when I picked it, I wasn't thinking I was going to be doing this.
Yeah, you're like, it's a short-term thing. But and again, I love that you shared that because there's so many women that I personally know that maybe they're starting a business now during COVID. You know, maybe they're just like pivoting. Maybe they're starting that side hustle they've always dreamed about, or maybe they left their job, perhaps not selectively. Maybe it was, you know, they're furloughed or the position no longer exists or whatever it is. And they're finding this new place. So I love that you shared that because if you're listening and you're in that spot, and you're feeling like you don't have a plan, you don't know if it's going to work out, you don't know like that you can just move forward and learn it as you go. And also that there's an evolution in that. And there's beauty there also. And that evolution of like, okay, I got one client, I got another client, I got another client. And I was going to ask you, what about, and you're very vulnerable in sharing this. And I love that about you. What was a moment in your business where things didn't go as planned?
There's been a lot.
There's been a lot. Yeah.
Go ahead. I'll let you finish your question.
Yeah, I was going to say, because sometimes there are women in our communities that say, oh, this happened, forget it, I'm out. Like it didn't work out perfectly, you know, like I didn't get the domain I wanted, or I didn't get that client that I pitched or whatever, I'm out, I quit, you know? So I'm asking you this question, and I know you and I are seasoned entrepreneurs. We know it doesn't always work out the way we planned. But when we talk about it, it also inspires other people to like go forward and keep on and stay focused and don't give up. So what was the time in your life when you were starting your business or running your business where it didn't go out as planned? And what was that like? And how did you get back on track?
Well, I guess can I give you two examples? I'll give you one from
sure.
And one from recent. Okay, so earlier when I first had I have two kids, as we've said, and I had my daughter. She's older. She was my first baby, and I was running the business and growing the business and trying to be a present mom too. I would bring her to the office with me like on Mondays and like had a nanny the rest of the week, and I was just trying to do everything perfectly, and you can't, right? So I wind up doing everything like imperfectly. So at any rate, I was representing. There's a very prominent town in New Jersey called Haddonfield. It's beautiful. It's like a downtown district in the whole nine. And I had my office at the time actually was based there. So I also represented the town. And because it's a town and it's political, you have to do like a bid every year. So long and short, it's a very big RFP I had to fill out. Even though I had been their publicist for 3 years, they had to open it up because it was a political situation. And I missed the deadline I had it done. Like I finished the RFP early. Like it was sitting on my desk. And then the lady who was like in charge of gathering all the RFPs, you had to turn it in by 5 p.m. I thought it was the next day, but it was that day. And it was like 4:48. And she called me, and it was a big account. And she called me and she said, Mindy, where's your stuff? For like so I felt like, now I'm dating myself, the game Frogger, where like
I totally know it.
Right? I was like weaving in and out of the traffic, trying to like run this thing down to like town hall. And I got there at 5:02 and they couldn't accept it because I missed the deadline. It's not fair. And it was my mistake. I mean, I was just like, I just had too much going on. And I was like, that was a wake up call that I had to clean my plate a little bit, trim it out, like focus on what was really important and like delegate more. Cause I used to be like, I'll do it myself. Even though it was, I had team, I just felt like I needed to do it. I had a lot of control issues. Not that I didn't trust them. I just felt like I wasn't serving my client if I wasn't doing it too, So I realized that if I'll manage and I'll make sure it gets done, and I'll also take things for myself, but I need to clear my plate so that I can give 150% to the things on my plate as opposed to 80%, which is not my style. So that was lesson number one. Okay, lesson number two came last year when my book was about to come out and I was getting myself really booked to do lots of press and things like that. I had actually assigned myself to one of the team members in my office to pitch for me because I thought, I didn't want to be pitching myself. I didn't think that looked very professional. So I was doing a lot of that. I was getting very busy with that. I was very excited. And I as you know, being an entrepreneur, you always have to worry about tomorrow, right? So I've been very lucky. The majority of my business career, I've been organically growing, and I've gotten a lot of referrals, but you also still have to keep your eye on the side, right? And keep growing and looking for new prospects to also can't rely on that stuff. But I was relying a lot on that stuff at the time just because I didn't have time to do the other stuff, right? And then right around January, I lost 3 clients at the same time. And it wasn't because of anything I did. It was just new year, budget changes, things like that. And then I also lost an employee. She resigned. So I was like, oh my God. I have to do more work and I have less revenue. And I didn't know what to do. So I didn't have time to start looking for new business. So it was stressful. I mean, we had I was bleeding a lot, internally not me, but the business was bleeding.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of revenue. And then I just became very diligent about looking for new business that I never really had to do as aggressively before. And I was able to recoup that. So it taught me not to be comfortable ever. Not that I ever am, but I really learned a hard lesson that way, because you just never, ever, ever know. And then one time you far down is when the rug is going to get pulled from under your feet. So you always have to be a step ahead and prepare for what could be, and be ready to pivot and ready to make changes and things like that you need to make. So I did. I did some stuff to kind of recoup some of the funds that I lost, and made some edits internally with the team, and we're fine now. I mean, it's obviously a different situation because of the unfortunate pandemic.
Right.
But everybody's sort of facing the same unfortunate circumstances. I mean, we're just come back. My clients were just starting to come back. Not all of them were shut down, thankfully, but that was very stressful too. But I think because I had other experience behind me already from last year, I handled it with a little more grace than having a major meltdown this time.
Yeah, so. I think that it develops the grit. So a lot of times, when you have new entrepreneurs or new women that are launching businesses, those things happen, but really you need to look at it as it's a long-term journey, launching, growing, scaling your business, getting more clients. And that only develops grit. I think when I was listening to your story, every time I've been in those moments, it's obviously painful, right? It's stressful. You have anxiety. It is.
Violet, I couldn't wake up in them. I would be afraid to get out of bed. I'm like, what client's going to let me go this week?
Bad.
I was it was horrible. Anxiety.
Yeah.
But
then you're stronger later. You know what I mean? And by the way, this is total Miami weather. It was super sunny outside. I had light on my face. Now a hurricane's coming through. It's getting darker and darker on our video. Eventually you won't see me. You'll just see my teeth. My selfie camera. But anyway, for those listening on the podcast, we're doing it through Facebook Live. And you can't even see me. You can see my nails and my teeth and my AirPods. Miami weather is at its highest game right now. It toys with our emotions all day. It is gorgeous in the morning, beautiful. And literally you're getting ready for the day to go outside. And then it's hurricane category 5. And then you're like, what? Then you change everything. And it's just so temperamental. I've had it. I'm
envious of you in a couple of months when it's miserable in the Northeast.
Someone says I can see you. Perfect. I'm so glad you can still see me. And if you have questions by the way, if you're joining us live, if you have questions for Mindy, feel free. I was going to ask her, I was going to ask you what your biggest lesson was, but I think your biggest lesson was don't get comfortable. Yeah. And also all of those things that happen really develop grit because you become more seasoned and then things wash over you faster. It doesn't knock you down as much as it did before. I mean, you're probably, I've been those moments, those days where I don't want to get out of bed. I'm it's just how am I going to get it all together? But then you do. And then you
work for someone corporate, there was just nothing wrong with that, obviously. But I was my parents were but you have this beautiful business. I'm I don't know, it's so stressful. But yeah, I'm I knew it would prevail. You just have to put your and do it.
You just have to go through it. So for those that are listening and going through that, just keep on going forward. You've got this. You can do it. And it's going to make it so that you become, now things happen, Mindy, to me. And I'm Like people will send me hate mail and I'm like, whoop, like it just falls right off me. I'm like, oh, you know,
I know.
now I'm used to it. But the first time you get that hate email or that thing that goes wrong or that client or whatever, it knocks you out. But eventually you're like, whatever. I mean, it's, you know.
Yeah.
What would you say to someone who's listening right now and either thinking about launching their own business? Maybe they were in a situation that they were not happy with. Maybe they got furloughed, maybe they got let go, and they're thinking about starting their own business. They don't know where to start. They're kind of really scared. What would you share with them to inspire them to move forward?
So I would say first figure out what your main interest is and what your talent is and what you really love. So I love news. So public relations is very vast. There's a lot of different divisions of PR. So I specifically made like media strategy was sort of like my lane. And while we do some event planning, we do some marketing, we do social media and all of that, like mainstream media strategy is like what we do because that's with my passion. So I would say pick your passion first because you're going to always excel the most in that way. And then it really depends on financially, like what you have going on. So when I started my business, I really didn't have a choice. Like it's not like I left something to like start the business. I mean, I did. I technically resigned from working for not a nice lady, but it's not like I had this great career I was really happy in, but I started feeling like bored or something. If I did, I probably would have done this more as, I don't want to say a hobby, but like as a side hustle. That's sort of how I'm doing my speaking career right now. It's like that's my side hustle. And then maybe one day when I'm older, like maybe I'll scale myself back in this side and just take a smaller amount of clients and focus more on that. That's sort of like my plan for myself, but not right now. I'm 46. Like I'm talking like when I'm maybe 60 some years old or what have you. So I would say if you're able to kind of manage both so that you don't have a major salary cut and like you have to like cut your out like so that you're like almost can't breathe, do that. And then just know that you're going to work much harder because you're going to work your real job. And then you're also going to work your side hustle. And eventually like the side hustle can become your real job. Or if you do have like a cushion or maybe you're out of work and like therefore the decision's made for you, then just put all of your effort into that and do what you need to do. If you need to get a business loan, there's a lot of opportunities right now because the economy unfortunately is so horrible, but you can get a lot of assistance to do these sorts of things. I think like there's a lot more opportunity financially for help today than there was probably a year ago because there's a lot of people in that boat. I'm not a financial person, just like I'm not an MBA, but nevertheless, like that would be my, suggestion in that way. And, just try to maybe like set your sights with smaller goals, sort of like I do for myself every single day. You want to grow to be like really big, but you can start like smaller steps so that you're not making huge investments and therefore you can grow and create some revenue and then grow further and create some revenue, etc. I didn't start with an office and whether they're 5 or 50. I had no employees when I first started. I had one. They were part-time. Then they became full-time. Then I had a full-time and then a part-time in tandem. And I just grew in small bites because I was always afraid, what if I can't support it better? You know what I'm saying? So you don't have to do everything all at once. That would be my
advice. That's great advice. When you said try to keep both at the same time, that right there is just so like if you can, right? We understand you may not have that situation. You may have been pushed out, but if you can keep a foot in each door until that side hustle grows, that is golden advice because I see so many times people jump ship too soon. They have an idea, they have a website, and then they quit a month later. And the biggest stress you can do and the biggest kill you can do on your business is to have total anxiety over how you're going to like pay for food. So
I agree totally. Why put yourself through that? And then you wind up resenting the business and you wind up calling it quits because you don't have a choice because you have to pay your mortgage or your rent or whatever it may be, feed your kids, that kind of thing. So if you are able to, and the other thing I will say this, like if you do the side hustle route, which is the way I would do it, if I was, to do over and had the ability to have that and, the side hustle, et cetera, kind of like what I'm doing, I guess, with the speaking business, truthfully, is I would carve out time in your day and make sure you adhere to that for the side hustle, or that side hustle is never going to grow.
Absolutely.
And that's advice I should be taking myself because I don't dedicate as much time to my speaking. I really want to break into that. And I just don't have a lot of time because I'm so busy being a publicist. But you really need to dedicate hours per week to that business, or it's not going to grow on its own. It's not like you're going to planting a seed and you're hoping the rain's going to just like feed it, and all of a sudden you're going to look out your window and there's going to be a beautiful flower. You have to nurture that. You have to give it time. You have to give it like energy. You have to give it love, and then it will take off. So
yeah, that's great advice. Yeah, great. Even for the side hustle, I mean, literally you could have a couple of side hustles, but even if it's like writing a book. So if you are, let's say you have a business that is growing really well and you're doing fantastic, and we have a lot of members and that business is still coming to them, which is great. We just had a virtual networking thing today, and everyone that was on there, they're still getting business. They're still signing up clients, which is really great. But so maybe you have that already, but you do want to do, as Mindy was saying, like maybe a speaking engagement platform, or you want to write a book, or you want to, go get certified or go back to school or whatever it is. Designating that time block in your schedule, it's a commitment that you're making to yourself. It's like, I trust and honor myself enough that I'm going to put that in my calendar because I believe in myself. I believe that this is what I want to do. So that was great advice for those that are either between both worlds or in one world.
Like, I'm like, oh, I did all this to do, so why? That's for me. But it's not like you're, not that there's anything wrong with it, but it's not like you're going to get your nails done. I mean, you're working on your own self-improvement, for your own, like,
investing in yourself,
your own business. So don't feel guilty. Like you need to do that, and then go back and do your other job too. But you need to carve out that time.
Absolutely. Mindy, this was amazing. Thank you so much. I hope we have inspired so many women with the conversation that we had. How can femmes find you if they are wanting to learn about your book, for instance, or your PR, whatever? Like, how can they find you?
Okay, so I am all over Instagram. I'm Mindy, and it's MINDIE.Barnett, BARNETT. And then I'm Mindy Barnett on Twitter, and Mindy Barnett on LinkedIn, and Mindy Barnett on on Facebook. My company is because I never told you, it was really long. MB as in Mindy Barnett and Associates Public Relations. So my website's mbandassociatespr.com. So check me all out there. And we represent a lot of entrepreneurs for what it's worth. We offer very like bite-sized packages and things like that to get people's name out there in the media and get them exposure and grow their business that way. So
awesome. Thank you so much. This is really great. And I think I can see myself somehow here. It's like now it's like turned, it's like really, it's going to be an ugly storm in a little bit. I'm so happy I have connection with you because I was like, please don't disconnect me, Wi-Fi.
You're going to lose your power.
I am sending you so much love, and from Miami all the way to New Jersey. Hopefully I will be back up north soon. My husband and I love going up in that direction, but hopefully we'll be soon and we can have coffee or tea.
I would love, or New York, or I'll be probably in Florida soon. So I'll definitely say it. I'll at least shoot you an email so we can exchange.
Yeah, I'm going to follow you now on Instagram. So you have a lot of love coming through. Mindy said you're fabulous. Bridget says you're fabulous. And 2 anonymous Facebook users send love your way too. Great message and advice. So thank you so much, guys. And we'll see you next week. Bye.
Okay, bye.